we need to find the cause for a disease, the ability of the brain to send different signals at different times to the cells, and the gut biome, of course, they are providing the nurturing of the cell. So, and we think that those are certainly part of the cause of a disease, because it starts in a cell, and for us to find out is the biomarker, what is the indicator for the different messages that or signals that the brain sends down to the cells, and what is in the blood that nurtures the cell. Those are the things that would or should be. We don't know yet, but we think we are on the right track, determining those as the cause of a disease versus the symptom of a disease.
Progress often starts with one uncomfortable question. What if the accepted way is part of the problem? That's what drew me to today's guest, Jan Breukers. Jan is the founder and CEO of First Choice Bio, a biotech company focused on supplying research samples to the industry. But what really interested me is not what Jan does, it's what he's challenging. Because according to Jan, much of the medical research still relies on random, blind samples from the general population. Now, if every human being is biologically different, then the quality of the sample and the data attached to that sample matters enormously. Jan's view is that if we want better research, better reproducibility, and more personalised medicine, we need to start earlier in the process. Before the drug, before the trial, before the result. We need to look at the foundation, the sample itself. How much do we really know about it? What biomarkers can we identify? Which subgroup does it belong to? And how can better data help researchers stop working so blindly? This conversation is about biotech, blood samples, biomarkers, AI, collaboration, and the possibility of making research more precise and more useful, and ultimately more human. So let's dive into the conversation. Okay, so welcome to Vantage Point Conversations. My name's Colin Parsons. For those of you who haven't seen this before, I basically get to invite amazing guests on, get to open up my mind, be curious, ask loads of questions. And my guest today is Jan. Is that correct?
Jan Breukers.
Okay, good. So Jan, opening monologue is always the same. I never introduce my guest, purely because I think I would do a very bad job. So take as long time, as little time as you would like, highlights, lowlights, anything in between for the audience maybe to understand a bit about you and some context maybe for the conversation. And then we just dive in and we have some fun from there.
Okay, so my name is Jan, officially Johannes Breukers. I was born and raised in the Netherlands, lived and worked in Canada, lived and worked in New Zealand, and now I am in California. I am the founder CEO of a company in biotech. We supply biotech with research samples, and we have our ideas that especially the pharmaceutical industry can make progress, where the pharmaceutical industry can make progress to ultimately cure people instead of just selling them pills and hope. That is where I would like to leave it at this stage.
Nice. So it's quite funny. We have, obviously, like with all my guests, we have just a bit of an introduction conversation just to agree topics, etc. And I was actually absolutely fascinated by what you're trying to build. And it is strangely aligned to, so I feel that most problems that we have in life, in work and outside is often they basically show up. We always say the symptoms, but we never actually get to the root cause of it. And we're always focused on trying to fix the thing that looks like it's springing a leak at this point in time. And even in my own life, what I found is that if I zoom out, if it's what's going on, you get a much better picture of actually what's going on, what the thing is. Sometimes you don't even have to go that much further, but taking that step back can be difficult sometimes because especially when you're in it, you think, oh, and you're very reactive to life. And especially in work when we think everything has to be done straight away. But taking that step back and having that broader picture of really what's going on really can make a lot of sense. And I've seen it in my own life where you think it's this thing here, but it's actually here. You find the root cause of it. And by by stepping back, you can see often patterns in things. And so when you actually started telling me what you do, and I don't remember exactly you telling me how you do it, and we can sort of dig into it if you're happy to share. I know it's probably in the beginning stages, but I was fascinated by that because it brings so much more awareness. Do you want to just give us maybe a bit of an insight, share as much as you, I guess, are happy to or can share at this point in time, what the focus is for your company, what it's trying to do, and where you are at the moment?
So yes, I can share all of that with you. Where the industry currently is basically they're taking random samples from the total population, blind samples basically, without any or very little characterization, and that's where research. That's what research is using to potentially find cures for any and all diseases. That, of course, gives them a really low reproducibility because we are all different. We are all different. You are different from me. I am different from my neighbor. My neighbor is different from the next neighbor, etc., etc. You don't find two people exactly identical, not even amongst what, 8 million, 8 trillion, or how many, whatever the population is. I don't know. I don't count them every day, but I know there is not an identical person in the world. So therefore, how can you find a cure for a disease if you go base your research on random blind samples? It doesn't make sense. And that's where we are at the basis of it all, because we collect those samples for researchers. So giving that after whatever, 10, 15 years of experience in this industry, giving that a second thought, and you think, well, how can we change that? And you change it by starting to focus on subcategories of the total population. So in other words, you try to find indicators that unite a group of people within the total population, and so on. And you focus on one group first, see if your potential cure can work within that one group, and only then you move on to the next one and the next one. Overlapping or neighboring, it doesn't really matter, but you got to, because the trick behind all of this is if you find similar biomarkers or biomarker sequences, as they call that, you can trigger similar results. So that means if you and I belong to the same group and it works with me, the reproducibility or the chance of potential cure for you is higher than when you belong to a different group. So that is at the basis of it all. We need to get rid of the blind random samples. That's number one, for sure. So if we can screen samples that we collect, and we can screen it instantly, because a lot of researchers do demand fresh samples and over frozen samples. So if we can screen that instantly, and that is important, instantly, because of course a sample for me today is going to be different from a sample for me in half a year. So because we are all continue living, I hope at least. So for that reason, yes, we need to be able to instantly screen and get as much data about that sample so that research can shorten their R&D procedures. It makes the potential cure, of course, cheaper. It doesn't work for the total population, but at least we know we have a high reproducibility within that one subcategory. Then you go to the next and the next subcategories, and once it drops, they know they have to adjust the cure. They can't just sell us I don't know how many side effects, and the most famous excuse is results may vary, of course. These are the things that we are so common to now. We just accept them every time we see the ad on TV. Results may vary. Of course, it will vary because we're all different. So it's very logic. We need to break down the total population and look from there to the next subcategory and the next subcategory. But focus on one first, see if you can get a high reproducibility. I would say at least 85%, and then go to the next subgroup of people before you move on. That's how we understand where the industry should be going. And we actually notice it is going there. Let's put it that way too, because there is a demand for our product, even though we don't have a product yet. We are just at the pre-seed and in between pre-seed and seed stage, and we start looking for investors probably this month, end of this month, beginning next month, and so we don't even have our own collection center yet.
It's there's so many questions I've got to ask you about this, Jan, because I never realised that for research purposes that they just take blind samples. So because how does that work? I don't know if is it different in different countries. I'm not quite sure, but ultimately, I don't think I've ever I've donated blood in a way to give to other people that would need it in whatever situation. And I've I've given blood in terms of needed to be checked for certain things. So I'd been to the doctors and I'd been unwell and they said, oh, we'll go and get a blood test. How does it work for the research side of things? Are people going to a certain place to give blood, or is that blood taken from some of those instances that I've done, or is it done something differently? I'm not aware of how that works.
No,
currently.
that is exactly what we are trying to set up, and that's why we are looking for investors. Set up a collection center here in the Bay Area, because I've got a team of ex-colleagues, and they are willing to jump ship where they are working now and come and help us if we can get this the financing for this project together, and then we will set up our own donor database. And of course, with the help of AI, we can then match donors with research demand. And once we know what they got in the last time, and we will be, of course, in touch with our researchers, and they will say, "Hey, that was successful. That one was not. So can I get one more of that category and not of the other category?" So we need to. Uh, the cost of R&D is ridiculous. It's ridiculously high, and we need to bring that down. So narrowing down the focus is certainly number one. And so yes, we are setting up a collection center where we can collect, hopefully, not just whole blood, but also bone marrow samples and nasal swabs, that sort of tissue samples. And it just depends on what the researcher is looking for. I have to say, 75% of all our product that goes to the researcher is from what they call normal human beings. People without a disease state is 20-25%, sort of. But that has been collected through hospitals and clinics, of course. We are not touching that ourselves.
So you talked about biomarkers, and so uh, I don't know. Is there a known number of biomarkers that we have currently? Like, is it 10, 20? I have no idea. Sometimes I've got my results back and I look at it, and obviously it looks like code for the computer, and I don't really understand it. But normally there's maybe 20 or something. Maybe it's only if they've screened for those sort of things. How many roughly are there?
There is something like 2,200 to 2,500 known biomarkers at the moment. We can instantly screen for only 10% of that. I'm sorry, but that's all we can do at the moment. But we are rapidly working on increasing that. For that, we will need not just our scientists, but we will also need collaborations, strategic partnerships, etc., because we can't do it all ourselves. And that's another aspect of this industry, especially the supply industry, is where everybody runs around with blinders on, instead of reaching out and saying, "Hey, if we can provide it, can you provide it, or can we do it together and help this researcher move forward?" Because it's already a demand-driven market, and that means there is more demand than supply, and then everybody starts over-promising and under-delivering, and again that makes the R&D the whole process way too expensive, because they get disappointed too often, and then they'll have to start that whole process all over again, and that can't be the purpose of the supply industry. It's certainly not the purpose of the research in total. We need to find cures for people to improve the quality of life for everybody. And that's what we need to keep in the back of our mind all the time.
I was just thinking, you said research and development is such a high cost. And I mean, I don't know any pharmaceuticals necessarily, but obviously a big part of their world is research and development, so they can, create new drugs or new solutions for illnesses and problems, etc. So it would seem that this would be, and again, probably from my simple mindset, that this would be an absolute no-brainer in terms of a collaboration, because to bring their costs down, like you said, if they do all this work, run all these tests, and then they want to test it again, and then they get another sample in and it fails, they might have actually had a very, very usable solution for something, but it's been dismissed purely because they couldn't get the same type of blood, or like in a certain area. So in terms of the research and development areas, do you have a lot of engagement? Do you have a lot of collaboration? Are they driving any of this at the moment, or is this something that you're just trying to connect A with C and you're B at the moment, if that makes sense?
At the moment, that's what we do, because yes, even though we don't have any product ourselves yet, we've got already more than 3 million in RFQs, requests for quote, but we don't have any product yet, so we cannot deliver. So therefore, yes, we are reaching out to colleagues and different supply companies. But then we have to pull out, because we had an experience, more than one, sorry. We had a couple of experiences that people are over-promising and under-delivering just to get the order in, and then we get caught as an intermediate, or as a distributor. We get caught in the middle, and the customer is not happy. The supply company still wants the money, and it was unsustainable for us. But therefore, collaboration is therefore even more important, so that we take that responsibility together. And it is all about communication and helping research further. And therefore, we do not think that it shouldn't be that way. We should not have to disappoint research. If we cannot deliver, we have to be honest about it and say, maybe you should go there. Maybe you should ask these people. Or do you want us to approach them and maybe we can do it together? It is all about communication, and it's about who doesn't know any person that has passed away from cancer? I've had too many in my life, I can tell you that. And that's what is still motivating me, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. It's I think that that collaboration part um is massive, right? And
Yes.
it I've seen it in companies. I've seen companies be torn apart purely because even internally they don't collaborate and they don't communicate, and it's quite something. And this is this is for, like you said, you know, you've had personal experience, you know, and you know, that's very sad, and I know you've shared that with me before, and that's one of the drivers for you. But, you know, cancer has been such an unknown quantity, you know, there's so much research going on. There's almost, again, we always sort of think, oh, there's the solution for it, but it's still having such an impact. And again, it feels like zooming out, you know, just to sort of touch on that again, you're looking at that end-to-end process, not just the creating the drugs. It's the, okay, how are we, you know, how are we screening for these people? How are we looking at it? And just making that a joined up process, because ultimately the goal should be to cure cancer. And I don't know how possible that is. Again, I have no medical background or knowledge, but it's just, uh, you know, bringing all of those pieces together. And I often feel that, you know, when there's separate entities trying to deliver all of those, collaboration is different because they all have different goals. Oftentimes it's about money. And yes, money is important. I'm not sitting here suggesting it's not, but the goal, overarching goal should be, let's cure cancer. And absolutely, yes, you know, there's money to be made in all of this stuff. That's absolutely fine. That's, you know, money generates, you know, other things for us. But I think that collaboration, and I think, how difficult is it to collaborate? Where where do the decision makers sit in terms of trying to make this more of a collaboration? Is that in the pharmaceutical companies? Is that in the research? Is that in the donors? Where would you say that was?
I first and foremost think that it can be even pre-research where we are the supply industry. If we combine our services, not just the collection of the sample and screening it, but if we can, on behalf of our partner companies, if we can apply their screening methods instantly and that way help them further, they can get we can negotiate and they can get a part of the profit of that, of course, because it is all about, if we keep the main target for right ahead of us, curing people and eradicating diseases, and that is where it should be. We should collaborate at the pre-research level to get as much detailed, as much characterized sample to the researcher. So we should actually be able to guarantee at least 85%. Here is your sample, and your research will progress because it's all in that sample. So it's all up to us to say, we can do this and give them a blind sample and good luck. But I don't think that is what the industry wants us to do, ultimately. And therefore, we seriously think that, yes, characterize the sample as much as possible, make it indeed an individual sample, and that way helping them towards what they call personalization of medicine. And from there, First Choice Bio is certainly thinking that there is a next step, and that is what is happening now is basically symptom based research, symptom-based research, gives you only the opportunity to manage a disease. And the next step, according to us and several theoretical physicists at the moment that we are discussing this with, we need to find the cause for a disease. And we have a few that we think could be a cause, and one is the gut biome, and secondly is the brain, the neuroplasticity. In other words, the ability of the brain to send different signals at different times to the cells. And the gut biome, of course, they are providing the nurturing of the cell. So and we think that those are certainly part of the cause of a disease, uh, because it starts in a cell, and for us to uh, find out what is the biomarker, what is the indicator for the different uh, messages that or signals that the brain sends down to the cells, and what is in the blood that nurtures the cell. Those are the things that would or should be. We don't know yet, but we think we are on the right track, determining those as the cause of a disease versus the symptom of a disease, because that's all we are doing at the moment. And I'm not sure we can probably, with the symptom of a disease, we can manage a disease, but we cannot cure it, let alone eradicate. And if that is still the goal, then we should be aiming for the cause of a disease. But this is something we are not at that stage yet. For now, I think we can do much better by personalization of medicine, and that starts with getting as much data out of that sample for the researcher even before they start. And that is step number one.
Yeah, can I just I touch on that as well? It just because I was wondering, it's very interesting. So, you're talking about the microbiome in the gut and almost the signals coming from the brain. Um, would that be something that could be captured as part of the sampling in any way? Because um, I don't know how necessarily you would do that. Because I guess if you have the blood, you've got everything there in terms of trying to understand what someone's diet is and what their thought patterns are. That's quite a difficult thing to capture. Could
It
you
is.
almost attach that in at the sampling level as well?
Uh, there's a simple example. There's an expression: if somebody's glass is always half full, other people's glass is always half empty. There is a correlation between the glass being more than half full and the immune system, the strength of the immune system. So if your glass is always more than half empty, and you are relatively negative, standing on both feet in life, then your immune system tends, I'm not saying it can be proven yet, but your immune system tends to be more vulnerable. So that is a start, but finding those indicators in a sample of blood or wherever we will have to look for it, that's something that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I was just wondering how do you define if someone is thinking positively and how
You
their
can.
mindset
Uh,
is?
for a lot of people, of course, that varies by the moment. But in general, those things are they are certainly related. We're not sure yet if they are directly related, and can we prove it? At this moment, no.
Yeah,
I wish
but
that somebody came knocking on our door and say, "Hey, we can prove it, and we are willing to collaborate with you," because ultimately we are trying to cure people. We're trying
yeah,
to eradicate diseases.
yeah. And is the focus on cancer patients at the moment for the research around cancer, or is this applicable for all? No, I want to say diseases. I don't know if the diseases is the right word.
We think it is applicable to all diseases. However, some 70% of our samples in the past have gone to cancer research. So there is certainly a major focus on cancer, but there are other diseases as well, of course. And we think if you go to the cause, we will be able to cure all diseases. Of course, we have to be able to. We are smart enough,
Yeah,
and with the help of AI, we can collect as much data as we want, and we should be able to.
yeah. I actually want to touch on that point because AI is AI is one of those hot topics, in any industry around the world. um, Most people seem to think it's about, I don't know, making their day-to-day lives a little bit better. But I've not really heard many people, and I don't consume a lot of news. I've not really heard a lot of uh, the medical industry using AI. Probably they are. I'm just not aware of it. But um, it felt to me when I first heard about AI, when it started to come into the mainstream, that we had the possibility to use AI to solve some amazing, problems that we've had for a long time. Uh, would you have any knowledge about that in terms of, is that progressing? How is that being used in the medical field to try and find what the root cause is rather than finding the symptoms? How is that applied? Yeah, if you've got any knowledge on it, it'd be great.
I I have not heard too much about that specific subject yet. I am open to listen to everybody who's willing to help us, and we are certainly reaching out to everybody that is working in that part of the sector. But in general, AI and health uh, is certainly it is only at the beginning stage, and it will run our company completely. I have no doubt about it, because data is everything, and ultimately uh, the collection of data is very important, and therefore I believe that that AI will take over our business, or will run it, not take over. Sorry, it will run our business completely, because we want to help the researcher, and uh, because without data we go back to where we were, and there is too many casualties, and we are losing too many people still, after what, 80 plus years of research. I think that is we should all be looking in the mirror and basically feel guilty that we have made only such little progress, and stuck with blind random samples for so long. But it's only because I didn't know that. I'm a generalist. I'm not even a specialist. And as a generalist, I got involved in this industry some 15 something years ago, and I picked up on it only step by step, very, because we noticed that customers weren't happy. But it's what you said. When you step back and you look at the bigger picture, that's when you find out, hey, where is this going wrong? And it starts. We are basically, when you provide samples for research, you are the foundation of that research. But if you only provide a sample, then your base or your foundation is very narrow. If you provide them with all the data that you can get out of that sample, you have a better foundation, and a stronger foundation, and we can help them save resources, and uh, make that R&D process, shorten it, and make it more affordable for everybody. Because
Yeah.
to me it's very simple, and where AI will certainly help in that. Um, because without it, we're going backwards.
Yeah. It's interesting. As you were talking, I realized my my question, I sort of answered it in my head. The fact is that, AI can be amazing. AI can find things that we wouldn't even conceive of. But in order to do that, AI needs data, and the data
Yes,
is from the sampling. And I was thinking, I've kind of tried to find a solution in my head of how all this would work. But the reality is it's step by step, right? It's about building that data sample. We have AI can plug into all the things on the internet, fine, but it needs data to be plugged into it in terms of, donors being able to give it the samples and be able to extract the information. It can't just look at a bag of blood and go, oh, that's a bag of blood. It needs to know the information within inside that. And that's yeah, it's the starting point, right? And
yes.
that's
We are, and we have to be aware of that. We are always at the foundation. We are at the beginning of all research, and therefore, if we provide a stronger sample, a more characterized sample with individual data, that's when we make it stronger, because it is more focused for the researcher. And based on that, the researcher can also say, no, I don't think that sample will work for me because I'm still focusing on this subcategory and not on that one. It is so important. They can keep trying to look for a cure for the total population, but you get only 15% reproducibility. So how can you expect if you get only 15% reproducibility, it doesn't mean you're not going to get more than 20-25% cure. The rest of the people just pop pills and they live on hope. And maybe it works in the brain. For some people it does, apparently, but for the majority of us, we will not get cured.
yeah.
So
I think that's
it is very basic, very basic.
yeah. And you mentioned this to me last time, and it kind of stuck with me because you know we are thinking about in the conversation we don't really think about the patient at the end of it. They're going through something very painful and very horrible, um, and when there is a potential solution in terms of tablets, etc., that brings some hope to that person. But
Yes,
as you just said, that 15%, that's so low, it's almost negligible. It's 15%, given how much research and time and study has probably gone into that drug. To come out with 15% is, you know, obviously 15% is better than nothing, but the reality is that person who's going through that treatment and is in pain and you know is looking for something to really help them, the reality is you're not gonna give them much, and in those times it's very painful for them, for their family and friends, and it's about that person having a much better chance of you know, having tablets that are more applicable for them. I want to say tablets. I don't know if there's other solutions. I'm obviously I'm a bit naive in terms of all these solutions, but it's giving them a much better chance, and that's ultimately the goal, right? And it has to, and if we just come back to that and just keep understanding, okay, the goal is to give that person with that disease such a higher percentage chance of whatever they're taking to work. And I know you've talked about the cost, and it's a very regardless for that person, they're in pain. Money is, if they had all the money in the world, they would pay the money for the cure, right? If you're ill,
correct. For the
but
cure.
making that more, yes, yes, they would pay all that money, but this also brings around, as you say, the research. I don't know if it's the time it would also save, but the cost of that, because that cost for research is often tried to be recouped from the pharmaceuticals. They charge a lot for their drugs, and I'm sure there's a big conversation to say whether they're charging a bit too much, but that's a conversation for another day, and probably not one that I can really get into. But it's that, I just keep coming back to that low percentage of. Now, if I was in that situation, I was that cancer patient, and someone says, okay, here's a drug, and oftentimes we're told that, this is something new, and you go, yes, I want to get through this. But the reality is, if you told me that there's a 15% chance that that's going to work, that's, if you had no chance versus 15, obviously you take it, but you would really want that percentage to be higher. And we have the capabilities to do it. We just need to put in the infrastructure and the collaboration to be able to achieve it, right?
Because then when you have a cure, potential cure for a subgroup, maybe even for a couple of subgroups, and you're still working on it, at least you can say, you can take a blood sample from that patient and say, okay, you fit in this and this group. This is the cure that we have. And you get an 85% chance. You would take the 85% easily, even if you're just popping pills. But popping pills with 15%, you would almost think that the industry is doing it just for that. And I don't want to think it, I don't want to say it loud, but I know it plays in the mind of many people that they think they don't want to cure anybody. They just want everybody, as what somebody told me the other day, a patient cured is a customer lost. And that would be a bad principle for the pharmaceutical industry. But if that was the motivation, then we are on the wrong track.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, I think there are so many diseases and problems in the world. I don't know why I'm thinking this, but it's kind of not the same thing. But I remember when I got let go of my job, it was being outsourced to a country. So I worked in London, and my job was being outsourced. And a lot of people were unhappy about it because their job was going. But I looked at it differently. I said to myself, well, actually, now I get to focus on more interesting work. There's always something more interesting out there, more difficult problems to solve, and you've got more time to do that. So I think oftentimes we're very short-sighted. We think, oh, my job is going, so I won't have a job. But the reality is, if that job is being done by someone that could do it in a better way or more efficient way, in whatever way that is, then okay, now I get to go and solve other problems. And I don't think there's we've got so many problems in the world that we could put our focus into that, and there will be money behind it. It's I really understand it, but actually having all that knowledge and having all those pharmaceuticals access to, all the data that they've got, they could also apply that to other things, So yeah, it's, that's just my view of things. But yeah, I think it's quite short-sighted. How can I make so much record profits this year? But it's about looking about the future, what's going on with the planet, what's going on with economies, loads of different things. How can we collaborate? And we've said it before, but I think maybe we part that because we're probably going to go down a big rabbit hole of farmer bashing. But
no, we're not going to do that.
Not today. The actual logistics of it, I was thinking about. Obviously, you're in the US, and the way that different countries are set up for giving blood seem very different. So I'll just explain my experience. So I live in Luxembourg, but I'm from the UK. Now, I don't know. Here in Luxembourg, they're very good. They've got these things called laboratories. So, yeah. So there's a number of different brands. I think there's about 3 or 4 in Luxembourg. So you don't have to go to the doctor. You don't have to go to the hospital. You can go and give your sample. So you go to the doctor and they say, oh, yeah, something's a bit off. Can you go and get a blood sample done? Now, in the UK, that differs because what happens is that the doctor says that, and you have to go to the hospital to do that. There's not these sort of third-party places where you can go and give blood. Now, I talked about just giving samples, but I've also donated blood, and I donated blood in a hospital. So I think it was about a pint of blood that again you give to like someone that needs it. If they've been in an accident or they're being operated on and they need it. But all these different countries have different approaches, different methods to giving blood, sampling blood, donating blood, etc. Is there a uniform way of doing this? And so I guess your work will start in the US. But I guess this is something you want to do globally. How could you bring that all together? Maybe I'm getting way ahead of myself, but do you start and prove out in one location and then go to another? If there's any secret sauce in there, please don't let all the secrets out. But
because the sample is very perishable, of course, the fresh sample, a blood sample for sure, it needs to be at the researcher's desk ASAP, as soon as possible. So therefore, we need instant screening. The donor comes in, we take a sample, we screen it, we give the details to the researcher. The researcher says, yes, I want that one over that one. And then we collect whatever they need. And this is the difference. We can motivate donors, potential donors, by paying them in the United States. We cannot pay them for the sample officially, but we can pay for expenses made, travel, inconvenience, time, etc. So we can reimburse them. And reimbursing donors is how you motivate. So therefore, we are not going to set up a collection center in Berkeley, because in Berkeley everybody earns $150,000 to $200,000 or even more dollars per year, and they are not getting out of bed for donating a blood sample. So you got to go low and medium income neighborhoods, and because there's more and more demand for diversity, you go and look for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color neighborhoods. Sometimes these two go together, low, medium, and BIPOC. Sometimes they do not, but in the Bay Area, we do have an area certainly where those two come together, and that's where we will have to set up shop, because you want travel, you want them. It's all about donor convenience ultimately, because if you don't have donors, you don't have a sample, you don't have customers. That is pretty logic. So that is at the basis of it. But yes, we can, here in the United States, we can reimburse our donors. From what I know, in Europe, majority of countries cannot. I know that there is collection centers in Britain, so in England, and in England, I have the impression that they are being reimbursed as well. Hopefully we can find, because yes, there is a lot of research in Europe as well, and Asia has another problem, because people are more against donating parts of their body, let alone blood samples, bone marrow samples, and the likes. So, but as long as we can reimburse people, we can motivate them to come and donate, because it is all about. You can be inclined to help research, but not all people get out of bed early, because the researcher wants to start his day as well as 8 o'clock or at 9 o'clock and have that sample on his desk. So if we come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with a sample, they will put it in the fridge, and hopefully tomorrow morning it's still good. That is not how it should be working. We try to be early and get it to the researcher ASAP. So if we can motivate donors to come out of bed early and do that by way of dollars, at least here in the US, then we should be okay. If you are in the right place, because I think you will never ever be able to to supply what the researcher is asking if you set up shop in Berkeley or in any high-income neighborhood. Because these people, and I can understand it. It is an inconvenience, of course it is, but you get reimbursed. And a bone marrow sample, I've done it for the last 15 years or so, but donating bone marrow, and I'm not doing it for the money, but I'm doing it to help research. But it is a half-hour procedure, and I know it's got a stigma attached to it, but it is not painful. The worst part is the following morning when you have to take off the band-aid that they put over the top once they have drawn the bone marrow. So that is the worst part of the whole procedure. But I know it's a stigma, and we will have to talk to many a donor the same story. But it is what it is, and we just hope that we can convince that money can convince more and more donors to come and donate. Because yes, the Red Cross knows all about that. There is a shortage of donors all the time, wherever you go. And I have talked, because I am from Holland. I've talked to the National Blood Bank in Holland, and they say exactly the same thing. We never have enough blood. They were asking me basically, can you guys supply us? And yes, we will be able to, but that is not going to be our priority. We are here to help research forward, and they use this is the National Blood Bank in the Netherlands. That's for reuse in human beings, so that is clinical, and we are not set up for that. Ours is purely preclinical and research only.
So I've got so many questions in my head. So
Well,
I was
sorry.
thinking, because no, it's great. It's I know one of the labs here. They actually have a van that parks on the way I drop my kids off to school. So one day a week they have a van. It's not the biggest van, but you can just go in there and you can go and have your blood sample taken. It's actually very convenient. And I was thinking that because, like you said, to get people out of bed and, they've got to travel, etc. It's to have a mobile service. Does that come with some downside? But then I don't know why my brain was thinking this, but I started thinking about like Uber Eats, like you can just order it. So I was thinking, how do you get from that donation center to the research place? So, and then my question was, do the researchers need like a pint of blood, or it's just a small sample, like a vial? Like I know so little about it. So if I go to if I go to a donation center, they take a vial of blood. Is it they're also looking for a much bigger sample from me, and then you could get something like an Uber Eats to actually take that to the research center? I don't know why all these comical visions are in my head. I know it's a very serious matter, but it just
But it
it
makes
paints a
sense
picture in my
because
head.
it is all about logistics, of course. And it would make sense if you set up a mobile collection center, but we will still have to screen it instantly. We will still have to QC it. The quality control still needs to be done as well. So it needs to come back to the lab anyway. So therefore, if we can motivate the donor to come to the collection center with a lab next door, then that that saves time, of course, because if you have a mobile center, what are you going to do? You're going to collect the next amount of samples before you have somebody travel from the collection center to the lab to research to QC them all and screen them all, and then you can say to the researcher, "I've got this, and this, and I'll make you pick." But the logistics of that is more complicated as than when we reimburse and research is willing to contribute to that. If we reimburse donors sufficiently and to motivate them to come back the next time because repeat donors are basically very what do you call it, valuable to the industry. So repeat donors are even better, but motivating them to come back time and again, it is costing a bit more. But if we can save them so much on wasted resources by giving them a broader foundation, by giving them a more narrow focus, that is an easy way off. It can't be that a donor currently for bone marrow, from what I know in the Bay Area, say it's $500. I'm just mentioning a number. I know for 100 mil of bone marrow, I know that these products can go for, depending on how you sell it, of course. If you sell it by 4 times 25, it's different. But if you sell it by, say, 100 times 1 mil, then you can make easily $40,000. Why does the donor not get more? Why can't we motivate the donor a little bit better, and give him $1,000? He can make $1,000 in half an hour's time, and we will still help research. They will save money because we can screen it instantly. We can give them that broad foundation, all the data that come with the sample, and everybody's happy. It's all about logistics, and
Yeah.
convenience, of course. But ultimately, yeah, money talks. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
I was just thinking when you said that sort of money, I'll be like, where can I go? Where can I go to? Like
It's a
even
half-hour procedure. A
yeah,
thousand
I
dollars.
was just yeah, like that's like, but again, that the word collaboration came in. We should all,
Again,
you know, it should all flow. Yeah, I understand. Certain people have certain parts to plan that, but you can't do that without the person at the beginning. But how many? So I know nothing about bone marrow donation. I assume it's a very painful thing, but you just said it wasn't.
no,
Is it the same as
it's
blood? I thought,
It's not. You get a couple of local anesthetics, and they wait 10, 15 minutes, and then they draw, and you walk away. Seriously, I've done it so many times, 3, 4 times a year for the last 15. Now I'm too old; they don't want me anymore.
old bone marrow. But look, the thing is, like you said, money talks, and
It is.
absolutely, like why should the person providing all this data not be remunerated for all this, the stuff? And then I was thinking, it's such a wise thing to do because you said about you want consistent donors. If you because you can also check between, like you said, my blood is going to be different today as it will be in a week's time. But then you've got data that AI could compare between weeks what's going on, and you could really find it. So then you've got a consistent donor who's happy to come, books it in their calendar, not just like random turning up, etc. So yeah, like that's such a smart way to do it because how many people out there will go, "Yep, I'm going to do that." Um, just not necessarily to, make that their only source of income, but just to go, yeah, okay, look, this is worth it. This is a motivation, and you go because oftentimes, we do these things, we donate, whether it's blood or money, and we have no idea where it's going. But you go, okay, right, I'm doing it for a reason. I know why and I'm going to commit to it. And what a great, everybody wins from that, right?
Yeah. And not only that, you can, to a certain extent, you can inform the donor as well. Your product is being used for this, this, and that. So it motivates, but a conscientious donor they are very rare. Of course, they are very rare. So therefore, the money motivates. But if you then, if they are willing to come and donate, then you start talking to them and say, "Hey, this is what you are contributing to," and that gives them a sense of pride as well. So you give that extra little bit, and uh, that's how we should look at it, because it is all about mankind. It is all about curing. Uh, who wants to have a cancer case in their family? Well, I've got another one. Thank you. I do have one again. And I am running to the hospital as well at the moment and making sure that everything is fine and okay with me. I hope we can be preventative, but my sister, yeah, well, stage 4 plus, so basically been given up on, and that is, we are not doing enough in research. That is my strong belief. We can do
Yeah.
better.
And I think, like you just said, almost, you know, the money is one thing, but, you know, all these, cancer, I want to say victims, I don't know, I'm using the right word, but sufferers, they have family, they have friends that
Of course.
really are, they would do anything to help. Absolutely, you can help by doing this, right? And knowing that what you're doing, you're giving your time and your blood and, your data to help. And if you could say, right, we're helping this type of cancer treatment or this type of research, what an amazing motivation, because, you know, most of the time we have to stand not idle, we go and support wherever we can. But if we could do even more by physically giving something, and when it's such a personal thing, and you've just explained about your sister, absolutely. I think that's even more of a motivator, but it's such a double win, right? Just to be able to do that and to know that you're actually, you're supporting your family, your friends, whoever it is, by knowing, okay, yeah, I'm now going to do this. And, it doesn't need to be, I guess, like a lifelong commitment, but for a period of time of consistency. Look, what a great way to support whoever it is going through that. And that's I never even thought about that, but when I think about it, if I think about a family member, I think that would be the thing that would wake me up early to go to that center and say, yeah, I'm absolutely doing that.
It's not just at the donor level, it is also at the level of the whole supply industry. If we can collaborate, we should certainly do so. Uh, I mentioned it before. There was too many people that run around in their own lane with blinders on, don't know what they don't care what's going on in the next lane or in the next lane. They just run like this, and all they see is dollar signs. I can understand that. Hey, I am part of the world. I can't change the world, but if we reach out more, then we can achieve more. Because we're all, at least I hope that we're all aiming for the same goal, and that should be curing people and eradicating diseases.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite something. Some, I'm conscious of time. We'll just go on for a little bit longer. But what's the biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment trying to get this? Is it funding? Is it approval? Communication or the collaboration? What is it for you?
The biggest hurdle at the moment is, yes, getting the funding together for a collection center in the San Francisco Bay Area, one of the most expensive areas in the whole wide world. But hey, if we can get it done here, we can get it done everywhere. So I'm not afraid of it. So it is just, yeah, it's not easy, it's not simple. But then again, if it was simple, everybody else would be doing this, and I would not be sitting here now talking to you. So it is, and it has taken a lot of personal sacrifice, but I am committed, and this is going to happen, no matter what. But it is funding is at the moment. Yeah, our CFO is he's talking to a potential lead investor, and once we get the due diligence done, then hopefully we can move on to the next step, and with their help as well, then we can introduce our story to more and more people, and hopefully this will help too.
And so you're going to do one site to prove that it works. That if I say the business model or the logistics or everything works, and then just replicate that.
Yep.
Um, I
Yeah.
want to say wherever you can, but I guess would it
No.
be strategic for the US first or other countries? Where
Uh,
would you go? Other countries or?
we will certainly go to Europe. We will certainly go to Asia. For the Middle East, I've got a bit of a question mark at the moment. I don't want to be there, sorry, but no, we will certainly be global, and but it is of course demand driven. So if there is little or no demand, then there is no point. We had a company in India. They already asked us for distribution, distributorship, I should say, and basically I don't want to go there. I want them to help us set up a collection center in India because biotech in India is on the increase, and I think that I haven't looked into it very much, but I think that if we can set something up in India, then why not? And if we can do it together, why should we not do so? If we can help them, they can help us. Then everybody's happy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
so
just,
it will be a global undertaking, and we start here in San Francisco, Boston area. Of course, there's always demand there. There is some more areas in the United States, but maybe we'll take it instantly from here to Europe, and from Europe maybe to Asia. We'll see.
yeah. I think that's an amazing place to sort of wrap it up for day. I'm sure there's going to be people out there got a ton of questions, but I'm so impressed. I want to say excited about this for you, for us, because having that knowledge, having access to that type of information just feels like it's huge. It's logistics in between, and strategy and collaboration and communication, like you said. But if you can pull all of those things together, wow! I was, even when you were talking about India, I was thinking, wow, yeah, because we can compare against countries. The different types of food that we eat, the different
Yep.
environments. There's so,
Yep.
like there is
Yep.
there
Yep.
is almost so much data that we could get that would help us. Like you talked about indigenous tribes. I know. We often talk about plant medicines and stuff like that, and you go, okay, there's so much wisdom. It blows my mind. It's no small undertaking, yeah, and I fully acknowledge that. But that is such a great thing to do, to start solving those problems using data. And I think uh, I'm so inspired by what you're doing. I think that's amazing. I think it's great that you're challenging old ways and, bringing more of that together. And I wish you all the success. Absolutely. And I hope this conversation reaches out to people. And, I've got a few people in my network, obviously never worked really in the hospital medical industry, but I'm connected on LinkedIn, and I hope, this gathers momentum, and, this really picks up pace. And I think, you're the guy to do that. And I know you've got a team of people behind you, and that says a lot. So, for today, thank you, Jan. Where
Thank you.
should people find out about you? I found you on LinkedIn, but is there a website? Should they come to you on LinkedIn? Where's the best place to find you?
People can contact us on LinkedIn. Me personally on LinkedIn, it's Jan-Johannes Breukers at no, that's it, at LinkedIn. And but I don't mind giving my email address. I think it's on LinkedIn. I'm not sure. But my email is simple. It's Jan, Jan, at firstchoicebio.com. Or info@firstchoicebio.com, and it'll get to me as well. So I'm open to all sorts of collaborations, and just giving information away, because spreading the word is everything. And by the way, do not feel sorry for not knowing these things, because 99 out of 100 people do not know what researchers do and what researchers use. They don't even know that there are collection centers specifically for research. Nobody knows that. You're not the only one, don't worry. I didn't know it before I got involved in this industry either. It is just what it is. Research, yeah, we all know what research is. people doing something. But what are they doing? Nobody knows. And that they use human samples for diseases, and healthy human samples, or as they say, normal human samples for a disease. That doesn't make sense at all. But 80% of the product is normal human being. So if we can give that, that's why they call it normal human being, because it's blind random. But the moment we can give them an amount of data, then we can say this person may be a healthy human donor. That is something we haven't even looked at yet. But
That's
that's for next time.
that's that's an amazing statement. But yeah, yeah, thank you. And I love having these conversations. It's a big part of why I do these, just to understand, open up my mind, and also to share with other people, because I think, you know, even just entering into that conversation, you've really sort of teased my questions, and it's really something. And I'm grateful for you showing up for me, Jan, and I'm glad that I get to share what you're actually trying to do. So, but for today, thank you very much, Jan. This was a real pleasure. We'll be in contact, and maybe if we get some questions, we'll do a round two. That a live Q&A might be useful for people in the future.
We can do that, of course. And if people can always reach out, and they will get an answer, no doubt.
Fantastic.
Thank you very
Brilliant.
much for the opportunity.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Well, for today, I know it's your morning. It's my afternoon. Your sun's coming up. Mine's hasn't even
Beautiful.
appeared today. It's hidden behind some nice rain clouds and gives us a nice grey day. But fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for your time, Jan. And yeah, we'll stay in contact.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.